In this video, we're going to be looking at the IELTS speaking task part 1. In the IELTS speaking task part 1, you often get asked the question, do you work or study? In this video, we're going to be looking at how to answer if you are a student or you're studying. This will include the possible questions that you may be asked, including where do you study, what do you like or dislike about your course, and is the course difficult or easy? We'll go through some simple vocabulary. It's always good to keep things simple in the IELTS speaking test part 1. We'll also be looking at some tips on how to answer these questions in the part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. Let's go. After the examiner asks, do you work or study, and you tell him you study, they will quite often ask you a bunch of questions. They'll probably ask you about 4 of them because it'll be the first set of 4 questions. The most common of these questions is, where do you study? So a good thing you can say is, well, you tell them where you study. You can say, I study at a university or I study in a high school. But in part 1, you can't just say one-word answers. So you can say things like, I study in a university that is in the city centre, or you can say I study in the school that's just down the road near to the market. Or you can say something like I study at a private university in the city centre, or I study at a local government school down by the river in the town centre. Some vocabulary I use there, city centre is always a good one to use. You can say I study in the city centre no matter where you study, or you can say I study on the outskirts of the town, or I study in the suburbs. But it's good to say where your educational establishment is. You could also say if it's a private or a government school. Government basically means it's public and it's run by the government of your country, and private school usually means you have to pay to go there. Some examples, my university is in the city centre, or my university is on the outskirts of town, or my university is in the suburbs of Hanoi, or in the suburbs of London. And you could also say, I study at a private school or a private university, or I study at a government school or a government university. The examiner will probably ask you what you study. And some keywords here, you could say, well, I major in philosophy. I am currently studying the works of Nietzsche. My major is in medicine because I want to become a doctor when I leave the university. However, if you're not at university, if you are at school, you study a lot of subjects. So you could say, well, I'm in secondary school or high school, so I study a range of subjects from history to mathematics to English literature. A major is what your main subject is, what your main degree is going to be in university. And if you're not in university or you're in college, you can say, I study a range of topics. For example, you can say, if you're at university, I study at university and my major is in accounting, but I also do a minor in performing arts. And if you are in secondary school where you don't really have much of a choice, you can say, I study a range of subjects, including. Quite often the examiner will ask what you enjoy about the course or what you like about the university. There are many things you can say here. You can talk about the lessons themselves, you can talk about the student body, or you can talk about the campus itself. What do you enjoy or like about the course? I really like the student body because it is diverse and interesting, and I've made lots of new friends. Or you can say something like, the campus is really nice, it's full of natural beauty, there's trees everywhere, and it's a really old building with really impressive architecture. So these are all things you can think. And again, you need to keep it simple. So if you can talk about the course itself, you can talk about the campus, and you can talk about the student body. The student body just means the students that go there. So in answer to the question, what do you like about your course, or what do you like about your university, or what do you like about your school, you can say, I like the student body at my school, and then you say why you like the students that go there. You could also talk about the campus, which is the place, the building that the university or the school is set. So you can talk about how it's clean, tidy, you can talk about the good facilities, you can talk about the diversity or the range of ideas that are discussed there. Anything you want, but try and think of something that you like about your course. Another common question is it an easy course or a difficult course? And most of them are probably going to be difficult, so you can talk about your schedule. Yeah, it's an easy course, but I have a jam-packed schedule. Or you could say the opposite of that. Yeah, the course is very difficult, but I have a light schedule. You could talk about how interesting it is, how many hours you have to put in, research you may have to do, on how you might have to put in long hours down at the library. Probably best to use only a couple of sentences for each question. So the vocabulary I used there was jam-packed. It's a really good way to say how it's full or a very heavy schedule. You can say it's jam-packed, which just means full of something. It's an English idiom. You can say my course is jam-packed of interesting information. Or you can say my schedule is jam-packed, which means it's full of things that you have to do. The opposite of jam-packed is light. So you can say I have a very light schedule. Moving on to some tips. Now, the thing is about the IELTS speaking is it's best to not memorize everything you're going to say before you go in, because you'll sound like a robot and you will not speak naturally, and you're graded on how naturally you speak. So my first tip for you is don't memorize your answers before the test. Okay, it's fine to learn some vocabulary. It's fine to think of what questions they may ask you and then to have a think about before you go in, especially in part one, because it's quite predictable. If they don't ask you about your work or your study, they'll ask about your home or your hometown, which you can check out in this video here. Main thing is don't memorize your answers before the test. Try and be natural. Secondly, don't try to impress the examiner by using big, complicated words. It's always better to just speak naturally and use the words you already know. The best way to practice speaking English is by speaking to people in English. Part one is only 5 minutes long and they will be asking you about 12 questions, so less than 30 seconds per answer if you can. Good rule of thumb is try not to do more than 3 sentences per question. 3 is about right. The way to do this is you can just add details like what you enjoy about the course, what you dislike about the course, what you like about your colleagues or your peers, what you like about the teachers or the staff, anything you want, but try and keep it to the question. This one is in opposition to what I said earlier about planning a whole speech. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare. Now, in part one of the IELTS test, the questions can be predictable, especially the first few. Because like I said earlier, you can talk about work, study, or home. It's going to be about one of those things. So you can have in your head some ideas of what you're going to say. What I mean is don't rehearse the whole thing word for word. Just try and think of some things you could talk about if you get asked about your study or your work or your home. Another good tip is to smile and be engaged in your answer. The questions in the IELTS part one are quite boring. So if you just like, yes, I like to study and I do a degree in accountancy and my teachers are good, it sounds much less fun and fluent and engaging than, yes, I do a degree in accountancy and my teachers are really fun and I enjoy being with them. So just vary your tone, speak naturally, and be engaged in your answer. Also, look in the video description for how to answer the work or the hometown question. Make sure you like and subscribe and smash those exams. Hope you like this video. Please ask any questions in the comments, and if you did enjoy this video, check out one of these 2 videos. You can hit the Smash Exams logo to subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you in the comments.